Hey guys, this is Adam Carswell, and welcome to another episode of Dream Chasers Interviews with the Future. Today, I am joined by Michael Scott, the founder of Cannapreneur Partners. Michael and I first got connected through someone we consider an OG here on this show. And if you're familiar with Dream Chasers and everyone in our network, we really admire and look up to a guy named Richard Wilson, who's accomplished some phenomenal things. One thing that comes to mind for me right now is in the middle of the pandemic, 2020, Richard still raised $250 million that year. So he knows a thing or two.
Richard's the man. He's absolutely the man. In fact, when it comes to private placement investments, he might be the most effective and the most humble person I know. In fact, I've learned a ton of what I've done in raising private capital in the cannabis and other sectors directly from Richard. He is honestly a very impressive individual. Very impressive.
Very, very impressive. And his network is vast. You know, one thing I've been impressed with by him too is his responsiveness to email is very, very punctual. And for someone that's that busy is like, wow. And it could be an assistant, but either way, it's just super dialed in. So anyways, we love Richard here. And a funny story about him that it's coming to mind now. And I think we even mentioned this on the interview we did with him not too long ago. But at Raise Masters, our mastermind for elite capital raisers, by the way, guys, you can check out raisemasters.com. But Richard came and spoke to our group. And there was an individual there who I think was just trying to give him a run for his money, trying to see like, okay, how far can I push like a question here with someone who's very knowledgeable. And Richard's very humble response to this individual was, you know, I own commercialrealestate.com and I've never heard of that before. And it was just like crickets. And I'm looking over at Hunter. I'm like, dude, that was so funny. That was a great moment. So yeah, he's a killer. So anyways, we have Michael Scott again with us here today, guys, the founder of Cannapreneur Partners. Really what I'm looking forward to today, Michael, is definitely learning your story and your background. And then, you know, cannabis is a sector that I think has it comes with a lot of stigmas. And I'm sure you've
Totally. Oh, I've lived it, my man. I have lived it. And thank you for starters, Adam. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm always happy to kind of share whatever wisdom I can to help others, whether they're entrepreneurs or private placement investors. I think people that hit, high success milestones, that almost should be a mandate of ours, is to kind of share this knowledge and help grow. And I think that for a lot of reasons. I think entrepreneurism is what's going to make this country and world a better planet. Because let's face it, the politicians are not going to fix the issues of this country. It's probably going to be the entrepreneurs.
And we're seeing that potentially right now with Mr. Musk, you know?
Oh yeah, he is the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. And what he just pulled down with his Twitter acquisition, I think is going to be game changing. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. And I wasn't at first, but there's some individuals in my network that are significantly older than me and been at this for a while that also shared similar feelings, which is like they've never seen anything like this before. And entrepreneurship over the past decade has gone from something that people said don't get into to being very, much more admirable, I'd say. And I think you're right. I think we're experiencing a shift where entrepreneurs might begin replacing that figurehead leader role that politicians traditionally have. And I can't be like more than supportive of that. So I really hope that's the direction we're heading here.
I'm going to make a bold statement here. So this will be on record that we can go back to, because I made this bold statement about Elon Musk when he was like ranked, I think 130 or 140 on the world's richest list. I said this to several people, including my wife. I said, mark my words, this guy will be the wealthiest billionaire on the planet. It happened. Now I'm going to make another prediction about Musk. I believe we're going to reach a time where an uprising of people are going to want him to become president of the United States. Now, whether or not he would accept that bureaucracy, because that world is the opposite of how us entrepreneurs think and work. But I think there's going to be a massive movement of people. They're going to want Elon Musk to be one of our future presidents, without a doubt.
That's a very believable, bold statement. And I think what even validates it is, regardless of maybe how you feel, anyone listening feels about someone like Donald Trump, I think what really helped him in the last election was, hey, wow, here's this entrepreneurial business guy. We're not used to this. Maybe he can save us, right? And I think we're seeing with Elon even more optimism there. And what I would love to see based on what he just did, or someone similar to Elon, is them to figure out a way to kind of hustle the system where they become president, but it's like it's not the traditional president, right? Like we experience something that we've never seen before. So yeah, very cool. All right, so there you guys go. There's your future forecast. We're gonna hopefully uncover some more future forecasts today. But before that, Michael, I think I saw you're out of Massachusetts, Boston area, if I'm correct.
Yes,
Go
correct.
ahead. What's your story, man?
So look, my story, geez, depends on how far back do you want to go. I guess I mean, to the core of my DNA, I think people would describe me as an entrepreneur. My background, though, professionally for the better part of 20 years, I was a private wealth advisor. So I kind of looked at the world from kind of an investment lens, so to speak. Prior to that, my focus and expertise was actually martial arts. I started teaching martial arts when I was 15, and ultimately started competing at the national levels, captain of the national team. I loved it. That was something that was just, and to this day is a huge passion of mine. But really, I guess another way to describe myself or kind of my story is I'm a PhD, so to speak, a different type of PhD. I would define that as poor, hungry, and driven, because I'm certainly not the academic PhD. In fact, that, my successes to date has not been because of a college degree, whether from a state school or an Ivy League school, because I don't have one, right? In fact, I say PhD because my entry point into this planet was truly a cardboard box as a crib and a living a house that was probably about as big as this podcast room that I'm in now. So very humble beginnings, and to its kind of most fundamental core, the way I look at entrepreneurism is, there's a world of opportunity out there. And when I was brought to this country, I was born in South Korea, but I moved out of South Korea too. I had opportunity here. If I would have stayed in Korea in the 70s and been a kid that didn't have a biological father, poor household, there would not have been a lot of opportunity for me. Meaning didn't have a biological father in the picture. So I'm honestly, I think of every day as a gift. I'm very thankful to be in a place where I have a world of opportunity that I can go out there and crush. And I have gotten to a point where we're putting up some pretty good results, in the different businesses that I'm part of. So I'm pretty thrilled about it.
Yeah. I think it's, it speaks to your character. And I don't have a background in martial arts, but I know anyone that's made it to the level of success that it sounds like you made it to, there's a level of self-discipline there that comes naturally with it. And then again, to be captain of a national team, I don't care if it's badminton, right? Like that is not an easy task. So we have someone who's kind of transferred those intangibles from the athletic realm to business, which I can relate Absolutely. To as well. And
I tell people, I attribute a lot of my success to what I learned in martial arts as it relates to focus, discipline, having an indomitable spirit. Those are things that you learn through martial arts. And I transferred those skills into the world of wealth management, and then, to kind of expand the story, after about, 10 plus years being in the wealth management space, I started investing in entrepreneurs, right? So I built a level of success. I had other partners helping run the practice. And so I started getting more involved in entrepreneurism. And how I started out doing it is I would be the full financial provider for a startup business. And then I would mentor that entrepreneur at about an hour to 2 hours a week. And that was kind of my simple model. And then over time, I started generating more and more passive income, working an hour to 2 hours a week. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. It reminded me actually a lot, Adam, of martial arts. What makes a martial artist effective and why martial arts is effective is through the use of technique, you can beat a much larger, stronger opponent, right? And, I really think that also exists in the world of business. In fact, entrepreneurism has so many comparables that are similar to martial arts is how I would kind of label it. But I started doing that, and then I started doing it more and more, and I started investing in other businesses. And the more I realized I was like, wow, I actually love being an entrepreneur. by a factor of probably 5 or 10x more than being a financial advisor or a private wealth advisor. And then I went from working with people with publicly traded investments, and that was my life for almost 20 years, to jumping into private placement investments in the world of cannabis. And I started doing that. I started studying the industry in 2016. And then I wrote my first investment into the space. $500,000 was my first cannabis investment. And I was the first founding investor with 2 other, co-founders. The 3 of us co-founded a business. And honestly, I found cannabis to be an explosive world to create wealth because, kid you not, Adam, that first investment in cannabis. It was an idea on a 3-page pitch deck. And within about 3.5, 4 years, we sold that company for just under $120 million. Wow. So it was a wild ride, but I'm going to tell you, cannabis is just still heating up. In the East Coast, cannabis is in the first inning. So there's a lot more of these multiples, for all the people out there listening, they're thinking about raising money for a different industry or for a sector. I'll tell you, cannabis has unique levels of obstacles and barriers, but if you can raise capital in this industry and deploy it with the right teams, oh my goodness, the wealth creation is unbelievable.
I think, man, okay, there's so much to unpack there. So thank you for all of the information and details you just went into. The one thing that stands out to me is you mentioned how martial arts, sometimes it comes down to technique as far as conquering and doing bigger and better things. You don't necessarily just need to be the biggest and strongest. And we just did an interview the other day where a similar topic came up, which is, in athletics, there's always like a new record, or there's just certain thresholds of like who's the best, and then someone beats it, and then someone beats it. The cool thing about business and really entrepreneurship, to your point, is, we just had someone come and speak recently, again, at our mastermind, who was born literally torso up, one arm, barely a hand, and he's getting ready to do multiple 6-figure speaking gigs this year. He owns 3.
Wow. I love hearing stories like that.
Right. And so that's where you kind of go, well, with the right technique, anything is achievable, really. And to hear your story from the 3-page pitch deck to 100,
right.
120 million in a what was the time frame there?
It was about 3.5, 4 years, right? So I was the first founding investor with $500,000. 2 operating partners were pitching me. So I kind of decided to play the Shark Tank game as an entry point. They ended up making me the 3rd co-founder in the business. And what's funny about this story is the 3 of us, when you look at the inexperience, because the whole East Coast is inexperienced with cannabis right now, right? So I had never invested in cannabis. I had never grown cannabis before. I'd never sold cannabis before. It was a pretty new and foreign industry to me. One of my partners had never smoked cannabis. In fact, he maybe still to this day has not. The other one hadn't done it since college. But the 3 of us had never launched retail dispensaries, done large scale cultivation. So what makes this even more unique, and I think it's a good thing for the audience to think about, is we came into this space, and the analogy I often like to use, Adam, is let's just say we had the skill level of entry-level Major League Baseball talent, okay? But because we're in a space that had so little competition, it was so nascent, there's this green gold rush happening on the East Coast, we were compensated like we were top 1% Major League ball players. You know what I mean? And so it was a wild ride, Adam. In fact, there was a point where one of the biggest acquirers in the world tried to acquire us for $150 million before we were pre-revenue, before we had made $1, right? So that's how wild this industry can be.
Wow. So I guess I'm curious to know, after that $120 million day, what did you guys do individually or as a team to perpetuate that success and rinse and repeat? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs can sometimes, if the strategy is not there or an idea of what's next, that can fall apart just as quickly as it came.
Absolutely. So for me, I had seen And because I was, so in 2016, cannabis was medically legal in Massachusetts, but we were poised about to be the very first state on the entire Eastern Seaboard to be the first fully legal market. So I saw the opportunity and the writing on the wall, and I knew there was going to be many more waves of this wealth creation coming to the East Coast. So I had already, before I had sold this company, I had already started building a cannabis holdco. And the design of the cannabis holding company was, think, early stage Berkshire Hathaway, but in the cannabis industry. The idea was, let's do this over and over, wash, rinse, and repeat, but let's get better. Let's not just be capital providers. With Cannapreneur Partners, now our focus is, we're bringing capital, strategy, purpose-driven leadership, branding and marketing resources. Because the idea is there's so many, other founders coming to market, just like me and my co-founders who had never done all this, and look, when you've never done it, number one, it's harder to get the capital. So number one, you need the capital, but number two, having advice and resources can really help these businesses not make the mistakes that me and my partners made. I mean, we were the early OGs on the East Coast. You got to figure,
2016. Yeah, that was definitely, I mean, again, that would have been the most recent election besides the one that we just had, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, let me put it to you this way. When I was raising money for cannabis back then, it was a lot of stigma. Right? It's amazing how quickly that stigma has evaporated since legalization. But I'm going to tell you, there were people that were judging me. There were people but I just had conviction as an entrepreneur. I think smart entrepreneurs have to think about, where's the puck headed, not where's the puck now. And I was convinced the world has misunderstood cannabis. Driven by our politicians, the world has been misinformed. So I was convinced, because I saw how cannabis was helpful as a medicine for my mom. And so I knew, whoa, this drug has way more benefits, way less side effects. In fact, Adam, more people will die this year from caffeine than cannabis. 90,000 people will die from alcohol, yet cannabis is vilified. But that stigma is what's helped me create an amazing investment opportunity, Adam. You know what I mean? So I've leaned into it. I embraced it. Look, somewhere along the way, have I had some people probably judge me? Oh, that guy is helping bring up cannabis. Probably. But my belief is very different. My belief is I'm bringing something that is a net positive to the world. If you look at the facts, not the BS that our politicians tried to feed this country years ago, but if you look at the concrete empirical facts, cannabis is a positive in this country. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, that's really interesting the way you put it there. And I have to agree, as far as other substances that are out there that are deemed legal, that I've also seen just wreck families, countries, whatever. And part of the reason why I do think that cannabis, and maybe even other, I know the psychedelic industry is starting to make a comeback right now as well. Those substances, drugs, medicines, whatever you want to call them, seem to have more of an effect on people of opening up the mind. And if you are a politician and you want to control some people, it's probably best to not have them being in a position where they can kind of open up their mind and start questioning some things. So,
right.
And
dude, listen, it will, cannabis, that is one of the benefits of cannabis, is it will open up how you think about things. I have actually, I will candidly say, some of the biggest and best entrepreneurial ventures and investments I have made were directly correlated to me having a little bit of a toke late night and just kind of relaxing and disconnecting from things. And it's almost a meditative state. I invested in Tesla in 2013. I can trace that investment decision and car purchase. I bought my first Tesla in 2013. I can trace it back to one night. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I got this thing that I do. I'll get on my son's hoverboard and I'll rove around the house, smoke a J, and think about the empire I'm building. Okay. And I will tell you, is one of those sessions where I thought about Tesla. And what I did was I pulled the trigger. I went on the website, I ordered a Tesla, I put the deposit down, and then I started studying the stock. And about a month later, I bought it. And thank God I bought a big block in 2013 of Tesla stock, my man. I mean, that was the one. I attribute that decision in part due to cannabis.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff. And um, we were talking about judgment and stigma, which is even one thing, running through my head leading into this interview is we've never really talked about any medicine or drug, substance, whatever you want to refer to it as on this show. And so, I mean, let's just go ahead and bust myths and address stigmas straight up. What are some other
Sure.
things that you see common when it comes to you being successful in the world of entrepreneurship and capital raising, just with being the cannabis guy, right? Like people, what do you see? What happens to you? What's it like out there?
So are you asking kind of what are the skills or traits
Yeah, I
needed to
guess
be
what I'm wondering is,
successful?
what are some common myths that you find yourself busting um,
Oh,
over and over about the industry?
I mean, there's a lot. I would say one is, yeah, but aren't there a lot of negatives to that? I mean, I guess there's a lot, right? Sometimes I think people look at it as, well, there's this drug and it's got all these negative side effects, and it's the exit, or it's the entryway drug, right? The gateway drug. I think if you look at the facts, right, state by state as legalization has rolled out, and by the way, I mean, we're at 40 plus states at this point have some form of legalization, right? But if you look at the data now, these states that have been legal for a while, what the stats show in a pretty compelling way is underage consumption is going down, right? Opiate overdose deaths are going down. DUIs are going down, right? So I think what really makes a drug a gateway drug is when you got to buy it in a shady way from an illegal dealer that all of a sudden one day could be like, hey, Adam, I'm out of weed today, but I got these opioids. I got, this, I got that. That's what makes things a gateway drug,
Mm,
right? I mean, if we want to say cannabis is a gateway drug, then we better say alcohol is a gateway drug. You know what I mean?
amen. Amen
So,
to
so
that.
I actually think what we're actually going to find is there's going to be growing press because it's already out there where people are utilizing cannabis to get off of the harder drugs. In fact, I remember pitching an investor and he was skeptical, right? And in 2016, 2017, there was a lot of skeptical investors. They were very worried about the federal status of the law back then. It was not an easy feat to get investors to invest in this space. But I remember this gentleman, he looked at me and goes, really? You're telling me cannabis is an exit way drug? And he was an older gentleman, so you could tell he was skeptical. He goes, I'm going to text my daughter right now. She's actually an addiction specialist with therapy. So she's got all these clients and she's helping them get off drugs. I'm going to text her right now and ask her what she thinks about cannabis as a medicine for these people. Before I was done with the pitch, he goes, wow, she responded. I said, what'd she say? He goes, she actually just texted and said that her patients that are using cannabis as a medicine are the ones getting off of opiates and heroin and all the harder drugs in the most effective fashion. She said that's been the most effective. There's actually Harvard professors from with PhDs with strong medical backgrounds giving presentations on why cannabis is an exit way drug. So a big part of the reason why I created a lot of wealth in this space was we figured something out before the rest of the world did, right? And that's what investing is about, is you want to be where the puck is going, not where it was yesterday.
Mm.
And I can tell you it's undeniable. This industry is not going to be stopped. Billions and billions of dollars will be made. If you follow the regulatory trend, it is fast, how fast. We've never seen anything like this before in a country where all these states are outright going against federal law. I mean, this is
Yeah.
crazy if you think about it. That's how bad people want their weed, Adam.
Well, man, it's so interesting to me, a lot of what we've covered so far. And I guess what I want to dive into now is you've successfully raised a lot of capital in this space now too. And so more than most individuals out there actively doing deals, again, you have this extra barrier in influencing your investors of why should I even consider this quote unquote skeptical sector in the first place. Been able to overcome that, achieve success. So what are some of the strategies that you've learned from raising money in the cannabis space that you think can be applied to all sectors?
So, I mean, I think there are, I mean, if you want to be effective at bringing in private investment capital, I think agnostic of any industry, there's a handful of things that you need. Number one, I think you've got to be a tenacious individual, right? Like I think, look, people that are very prideful, people that aren't willing to just roll up their sleeves, get in the trenches and grind, it's tough to raise the capital you need. So number one, I think you absolutely need tenacity. You need to have the mindset of every no is one step closer to a yes. You know what I mean? I think the other thing is you need to have a disciplined process. So one of the things, that I found out was I needed to organize my schedule. I needed to get things designed in a way where all of my key activities, I was hitting those key activities to get to the end result. I needed to talk to X number of people on a weekly basis to be able to get to X number of inflows coming in. And I took that responsibility super seriously, Adam, because, I don't do this today, but the way I did this with my first cannabis venture is I was literally raising money as they were building. And so it was a lot of effing pressure. If I didn't raise the next $1 million, guess what? Operations stopped. People were going to get laid off. Bad things were going to happen to this business. Honestly, it was one of the most intense entrepreneurial feats, one of the most difficult that I ever experienced. But look, that's life, man. The bigger the difficulty, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the reward, right? And it did play out that way for me, but it was stressful. What else? I think full transparency. My approach with investors and how I raise capital in arguably one of the more difficult times for cannabis on the East Coast. I'd say arguably one of the most difficult times. Because look, this was the first state legalizing. We didn't have a whole culture of people on the East Coast that had seen a lot of people around them make millions of dollars in cannabis like you can in California. So people were like deathly afraid of the federal status of the law. So what I would say is you have to understand your investor psychology and you have to understand their risks, right? Nobody wants to take $1 million and put it into a fire to turn to zero, right? So whatever their concerns are about, can this turn to zero? If you're not addressing them, you're missing the point. So I think a proper raise it's both art and science. And you have to understand the psychology of that investor. What I understood is at that point in time, I understood the psychology because I was the first investor. I wrote $500,000 of my own money. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I was already in. And
I just want to say that's really interesting because I think sometimes people who are entering the world of raising money have a difficult time niching down on who they've been called to serve. Sometimes the answer to that question is yourself. And I've just never thought of it that way until the way you just put it.
I'm going to tell you, if you have full conviction, and this is where my process and when I work with my investors, we're not going to ask you to put money in something that we haven't already. You know what I mean? So I had already been studying the industry for over a year, by a year and a half by the time I started getting into the space. So I was able to articulate to the investors, hey, here's one of the biggest risks. It's the federal status of the law. We can be running an amazing team, have an amazing environment. The state can support us, but if the feds came in, I was worried about that as an investor myself, and everybody was back then. And so I had a process. I'd said, okay, well, I know this is the risk factor that these investors are concerned about. So I had to give more energy to that. I had to give them more data. I had to help them be more comfortable. So I told them, number one, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm recommending this investment to you. I already put $500,000 of my own money. I was the first investor. The first investor is always taking the most risk, right? We know that. Number two, I said, hey, here's what you need to think about, because I've already been down this path as an investor. You better think about the federal status of the law, right? A lot of times people are worried about that. So what I did as part of my process, one of the last steps, I'd bring on one of the top cannabis law firms in the country. They were on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. It was Vicente Cedarberg. And I bring my man Adam on, and he would talk and he would do it in a balanced way. And he would say, hey, yeah, there's real risks. These are the real risks. And we were very transparent. So Ray Dalio runs, I think it's still the largest hedge fund in the world. And I got this from Ray, and I instill this both in my workplace cultures, but also dealing with investors. Radical transparency is key. So I just be radically transparent. Here's the risks. And investors in cannabis, more than other sectors, they're more cautious. Because you got to remember, this was a fully illegal industry. right? So, and it still is on the federal sense. So there's more skepticism. So I realized if I did even more to be transparent, and I think this is applicable to all industries, it just happens to be even more important in cannabis. If you approach it where it's fully transparent, guess what happens? These investors don't feel like they're being sold. If you do a pitch that feels like a pitch, it's a missed opportunity. If you do a pitch that's very, very focused on, hey, here's your potential reward. And by the way, Adam, I find a lot of pitches, they don't really even get into properly. Here's your upside potential, which you should. That's why they're investing money. It's not a charity. They wanted to make money, right? Mm-hmm. So you show them the upside potential, and you also walk them through the risks. So this is where I would put my private wealth advisor hat on, and I would say, hey, look, your money's gonna be tied up for 3 to 5 years at a minimum. If you're not thinking that, private placement investments, early stage cannabis investments are not right for you. So you have to kind of go through the pros and cons in a transparent way.
Yeah. Wow. I really hope we get this interview in front of some ears and eyeballs that have never considered this space before, because I just feel very enlightened right now. On that note, I mean, how do you guys vet potential partners and those who would come in and start raising capital with you? And are you taking the deal full cycle? Like, just what does that look like?
So if you're asking how I vet the businesses or the teams that we're about to put money in, I'm really big on 2 core things. In fact, I've got an ebook out there that's on our website for private placement investors on how to find hot cannabis investments.
We'll go ahead and get a plug for that real quick too. Is it cannapreneurs.com?
Cannapreneurpartners.com.
Okay.
So yeah, somewhere on the website you can download. It's we call it an ebook. It might be more of an e-pamphlet. You could read it in probably an hour to 2, if not less. But I do have some pretty cool tips and techniques out there, on it. But one of the things I talk about, Adam, is I vet very differently than a typical private equity firm would. I kind of cut right to the chase, right? I really believe it could be the best idea, product, or service in the world. It does not matter. It's the people on that team that's going to create that value. So you got to vet those people. And so I look for 2 core things. I look for track record of success. That's huge. Any sports psychologist will tell you that one of the best predictors of a future successful elite athlete is based on their previous track record. So number 1, I'm looking for that business track record of success. Actually, it's not. I actually go bigger picture. It's actually life track record of success. I create a timeline and I literally I have them walk me through their track record of success. But then I dig into one other thing: emotional intelligence. So 2 of the biggest things I look for: track record of success and emotional intelligence. And I want to understand the trials and tribulations and the obstacles and what do they have to go through to create these track records of success. And when I see that there's this insane level of tenacity, I'm like, okay, these are guys that they're just not going to quit. And when you're in a new, nascent, highly challenging, obstacle-ridden industry like cannabis, you need to have tenacious people. A lot of people just won't make it in this industry. So that's a big one that I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I guess what I was saying too is, put it this way, are you guys currently looking for capital partners and people who can raise money for your deals?
We are. Yeah, we're actually, exploring and expanding that. I actually talked to one of my partners recently. I'm in a new place in life now with this liquidity event playing out, and I'm pretty liquid on a lot of it. So I actually have communicated my partner. I want to build a cannabis private placement raise team. In fact, I want to build the most badass private placement raise team for the East Coast. Because if you think about that, if you can bring the capital and you can deploy it to the right teams, and what is the hottest sector, the number 1 job creator state by state it gets into, and we're in the first inning of the East Coast, there's a lot of wealth creation we can capture. So that is one of the things. And in fact, I just talked to my partner about this. I think it was last week.
Okay.
So yeah. In fact, I got to hit up people like you that know the world of, know people that are good at raising capital that want to get into cannabis. Because I can tell you this, Adam, whatever people are making in other sectors, raising and deploying cannabis, the multiples are much higher here on the East Coast in cannabis. And I mean much higher.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to get this interview again to the eyes and ears of hopefully some dream partners there. Just so I'm clear on that too. You said you're working on building the team there. What would you say is the timeline on that, and what would that team kind of look like to you if you could build a vision?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd probably want 2 to 3 additional people focused in specific investor markets. So me coming from the world of wealth management, I know that the approach of what I would call a mass affluent investor, right? Call it someone that's worth a few $1,000,000. Maybe they could write a $100,000 to $300,000 check. How you approach that investor looks so different than how I want to approach either a family office that could write $1 million or $2 million check, or an ultra high net worth investor like me that can write, $1 million or $2 million check. I'm going about that dialogue so different. So what I want is a team of private placement raisers that have specialties in different investor sectors. One that's tackling the family offices, one that's tackling the smaller investors, one that's tackling the $500,000, $2 million check writers. And we're going to do it while I help build the brand. I'm actually going to the UFC on Friday.
Oh,
I have determined that the UFC is the best space to find brand ambassadors and influencers.
am I understanding this correctly? UFC as in like the UFC,
Ultimate Fighting Championship. Yeah. So
okay.
martial arts is a big passion of mine. In fact,
well, it's a big weekend. Well, this is going to go live after the one you're heading to, but you picked a good weekend to go to. I know. What's the guy's name?
Yeah. So
Oliveira?
I'll be in Arizona. And in fact, one of my businesses is a mixed martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you got to talk to Hunter. You got to talk to Hunter. You got to speak on that. I'm just getting into UFC because I've seen for the past 5 years how obsessed he is with it. He trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for like a year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So I'm going to start to build the brand. And what I see is as our brand gets bigger, right? And I think we got a great advantage on the East Coast right now in terms of a head start. But if I can turbocharge our brand with some of these, UFC fighters, brand ambassadors, the UFC happens to be the sector that's got among the highest cannabis consumption use. It's not a banned substance anymore. And I can marry that with a raise team. Our plan is to raise and deploy hundreds of millions of dollars in the cannabis sector, early markets specifically.
It's very exciting. And I think, whoever ends up becoming what's the word I'm looking for? A team member of yours can look forward to some fun times at some UFC fights as well.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we are going to start winding it down here, Michael. Fun question for you, because I think you said, so are you originally from the Boston area?
I'm a bit of an Army brat, actually. So my dad was in the military from Seoul, Korea. We moved from Italy, Germany, Kansas, New York, then Washington State, all before the age of 7. Then from 7 to 17, I was in Washington State, luckily those important teenage years growing up. And then I was in Georgia for 4.5, almost 5 years. And now I've been here for 20 plus years in Massachusetts.
Wow. Okay. So seen a lot of
I've been all over.
Yeah, seriously. Okay. So I know actually Richard, his beginnings, I think, were in Boston as well. Is that where you guys first met and got connected?
So I do remember, with Richard's background, he was here, but no, I met him through his family office club network. I started going to his conferences. I was impressed with him. I signed up for his program, and we just kind of, built a relationship. And it went from speaking at some of his conferences to eventually he became a board director, at that point in time. So the relationship just kind of evolved.
Yeah, I want to actually real quick as well, guys, remember to go check out Richard Wilson too, commercialrealestate.com. We'll take a moment here, just do all the URLs. So commercialrealestate.com, cannapreneurpartners.com, raisemasters.com. Make sure you make a note to go ahead and check all of those out. We'll do it one more time before we get out of here, and it's in the show notes. But yeah, so Michael, I guess what I was wondering is in the Boston area, always like to get an idea of like the best food, or not even the best food, but what really feels like home to you. So whenever you go away from Boston for an extended period of time and then you return, what is like the one meal, restaurant, place? Like there's got to be that one thing that you always look forward to eating when you come back to Beantown. What is it, the one that
Yeah.
unlocks the memories for you?
I mean, probably for me would probably be, I love Seaport in Boston. It's my favorite spot in Boston. And there's a restaurant called Lola 42. It's basically like Asian fusion. And honestly, I've raised a lot of money there. You know, it's like a second office for me. So I know the staff and the team, and it doesn't matter how busy they are, they're going to get me a spot there. So that's probably my go-to, and their food is amazing. Is probably what I'd say. Outside of that, I'm kind of a basic guy. I don't like exotic foods. I'm the Asian guy that doesn't like sushi, and I don't like math, believe it or not, despite being the Asian Michael Scott. I like more basic foods like pizza, believe it or not, is actually probably my favorite thing to eat.
Okay. Okay. And you said Lola 42 is the name of the restaurant?
Yeah, Lola 42 in Seaport. Yep.
Okay. And so there has to be, well, maybe not favorite, but like the most recent thing you've gotten on the menu there that you thought was pretty good. What was that?
Their lobster fried rice.
There we go. Guys, go get that lobster fried rice. Shout out to Lola, our unofficial sponsor of today's show. And one more fun question for you here, Michael. And if you need, so it's fun, but it's deep. So if you need a moment to think about it, no worries. If you were stuck on a stranded island and you were there for an indefinite amount of time and you could only have one music album with you while you're there on that island, what album are you going with?
Oh man, I can only pick one album, and it's got to be one group. It can't be like Pandora where I get a mix of everything these days, right?
One album, and it could be like
so I'll tell you what it is. This goes back old school for me, but it's definitely the one that pops to mind. It would be a Tupac album for sure. Actually, that's what it would be, my man.
Which one?
All Eyes on Me.
Okay. Oh, that actually, you know what? I'm gonna add that to my queue. It's been a while since I've listened to that one as well. So good choice. Good choice. And that would have been your heyday, right? How old were you when that album came out?
Oh man, I was late teens. Yeah, I was definitely late teens. That brings me back to a lot of memories, actually.
Love it. All Eyes on Me, Tupac. Guys, go check it out while you're eating your lobster at Lola 42. Okay, so today we did have with us Michael Scott, the founder of Cannapreneur Partners. As we mentioned, guys, you can go check out, well, let's see, you said there's an ebook on the website, right?
There is, yeah. It's basically an investor's kind of handbook to finding private placement investments, how to negotiate the deals, how to create, unique little alpha positions in the private cannabis sector.
Cool. And is through the website, is that the best way to reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'd say the website is a way. You can also email me, but I'm not much of an email guy, I will say. Really texting me is the easiest way to get me, but the website certainly has one of those, inquiries. If you just said, I would like to talk to Michael Scott, I'm happy to make myself available.
We'll put, make sure you drop a note that you listen to Dream Chasers there in the intro too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, for all our capital raisers out there too, don't forget the offer is on the table now. If you're looking to get into this industry, reach out to me, reach out to Michael. I did see, are you relatively active on LinkedIn?
I need to be more active. I mean, my team does some work on LinkedIn. That's one of those areas that it just makes sense for me to be more active on it. I just have not figured out how to unlock using LinkedIn from an investment inflow perspective per se, but I understand lots of people have lots of success with it.
Yeah, we recently had a guest speaker come specifically on that topic, raising money through LinkedIn. That would have been our March 2022 guest speaker. So definitely reach out if you're interested, anyone, in learning more about that as well. So there we go. Cannapreneurpartners.com. Go ahead and reach out to Michael. You said there's a contact form there?
Yeah. So there's a contact form that you can do. And I'll just throw out a real quick plug. I'm also going to be speaking with my Shark Tank partner, Kevin Harrington, at the Money Show next week in Vegas on early stage cannabis investing. So if you happen to be in Vegas, come out and check us out. Feel really blessed that Kevin's one of our partners, but yeah, it should be a good time.
You're making the most of your Vegas trip, man. I like it.
I am. That's the goal. Yeah.
Cool. So on that note, now that I think about it, this interview is going to be available immediately or within the next 24 hours in our private Facebook group, the Adam J. Carswell Facebook group. That's typically what we do before. If you're listening to this on Spotify, iTunes, wherever else, you can just remember the link to join the Facebook group is there, and you can always get these interviews ahead of time. So this actually will go out before you get to Vegas, technically. Beautiful. I'll get that over to you.
Awesome.
And yeah, let me just scroll through my notes here one more time. I think we hit on all the key factors. Yeah. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for investing your most valuable resource with us here today, your time. We were joined by Michael Scott, the founder of Cannapreneur Partners. You can go to cannapreneurpartners.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, in all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.